Nurse said there was no hope left, but the boy asked to try something unusual. Ethan Miller clenched his fists when he heard the words echoing through the white hallways. His sister had been there for 3 weeks, and no one could explain why she wasn't responding to treatments. "We've done everything we could. She hasn't responded to treatments for weeks," said head nurse Diane in a firm voice, looking directly at the 17-year-old boy who hadn't left the bedside. "No, ma'am. There has to be something you haven't tried yet," Ethan replied, his voice trembling with desperation. The nurse sighed heavily. How many times had she been through this situation? Families refusing to accept reality, insisting on searching for miracles where medicine had already exhausted its possibilities. "Son, I understand your pain, but you don't understand anything." Ethan stood up from the blue plastic chair where he spent his nights. "Emma is only 12. She hasn't even really started living yet." Diane watched the young boy with brown hair and eyes red from crying. There was something about him that moved her deeply. Maybe it was the way he held his sister's hand, as if he could transfer his own life force to her. Or perhaps it was the determination shining in his eyes, even in the face of such despair. "What do you have in mind?" she asked, going against her own protocol. Ethan hesitated for a moment. What he was about to say would sound absurd to anyone with medical training. But he had nothing left to lose. "I want to try music and conversations. Things Emma loved," he said, watching the nurse's reaction closely. "Music?" Diane almost laughed but held back when she saw the seriousness on the boy's face. "I read some studies online about how familiar sounds can stimulate parts of the brain that medications can't reach. Please just give me a chance." The nurse shook her head. It was a ridiculous idea, with no solid scientific basis. But there was something in the boy's voice that made her hesitate. Maybe it was the pain of a mother who had lost a child years before, or maybe it was simply the compassion still left in her heart, hardened by so many years in the profession. "1 hour a day," she finally said. "But no tampering with any equipment, and if the doctors say to stop, you stop." Ethan felt his heart race. It was a small victory, but it was what he needed. "Thank you, Ms. Diane. Thank you so much." That same afternoon, Ethan brought a small, portable radio he had borrowed from a neighbor. He sat beside the bed where Emma lay motionless, connected to tubes and monitors emitting constant beeps. "Hi, Em," he whispered, adjusting a strand of his sister's blonde hair. "I brought that song you kept singing all the time, remember? The one you learned at school and wouldn't stop repeating at home." He turned on the radio, and the soft melody began to play. It was a simple children's song, but one Emma had sung countless times through the halls of their home. Ethan watched the monitors closely, hoping for some sign, any change in the numbers flashing on the screen. Nothing. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The door opened, and Dr. Catherine Thompson walked into the room. She was a woman in her early 40s, with black hair pulled into a tight bun and an always serious expression. She had headed the neurology department at that hospital in New York City for over 10 years and didn't tolerate what she considered non-medical interference with her patients. "What is this?" she asked, pointing at the radio. "Nurse Diane gave me permission to—" "Turn that off immediately," the doctor ordered. "This is a hospital, not an amusement park." Ethan turned off the device but didn't move from the chair. "Doctor, please, it's just music. It can't do any harm." "It can," she said, checking the charts on her clipboard. "It can give false hope to a family that needs to accept reality. Your sister suffered severe neurological trauma. We've tried every available protocol. But she's still alive. That means there's still hope." Dr. Catherine stopped writing and looked at the boy. There was something irritating about that youthful stubbornness, that refusal to accept clear medical facts. "Son, I know it's hard, but you need to understand that—" "No." Ethan stood up, cutting her off. "You don't know Emma. She's strong. She's always been a fighter. When she was 8, she fell off her bike and broke her arm, but she didn't even cry. When our mum got sick, she took care of the house while I was at school." The doctor watched the young man with a mix of irritation, and something that might have been pity. How many times had she witnessed similar scenes? Desperate families clinging to any shred of hope, refusing to accept diagnoses she knew were final. "Your mother, where is she?" she asked, trying to shift the conversation. Ethan's face closed off. It was a question he'd been avoiding for weeks. She's working. She can't always come," he lied, looking away. The truth was far more complicated. Sarah Miller was cleaning 3 different houses to pay for the hospital bills their insurance didn't cover. She came home exhausted in the early hours of the morning and left before 5. On the rare occasions she visited Emma, she broke down in tears, begging Ethan to accept that maybe it was time to say goodbye. "I want you to understand something," Dr. Catherine said, her voice softening. "It's not that we don't want to help. We've exhausted every known medical possibility." "Then let me try what you don't know," Ethan shot back. The unexpected reply caught the doctor off guard. There was a simple, almost childlike logic in the boy's argument that made her hesitate for a moment. "That's not how it works. Medicine isn't about trial and error based on hunches. But if you've tried everything and it didn't work, why not let me try something different?" Dr. Catherine snapped her clipboard shut. This discussion had gone on longer than she'd planned, because it could interfere with the body's natural recovery, because it could cause unnecessary stress, because you're afraid it might work and prove you wrong, Ethan said, the words slipping out before he could think better of it. The silence that followed was tense. The doctor stared at him for several long seconds, her expression hardening. "You get 5 minutes a day. No touching the equipment. And at the first sign of trouble, this permission is revoked." She left the room, slamming the door behind her, leaving Ethan alone with Emma once again. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat in the uncomfortable chair, watching his sister's pale face in the dim glow of the monitors. Emma looked so small in that bed, surrounded by so many machines. Her blonde hair, which used to shine in the sun, now lay lifeless against the white pillow. "Em, you have to come back," he whispered, holding her cold hand. "You can't leave me alone. We always said we'd take care of each other, remember?" He closed his eyes, trying to recall better times. Emma laughing as she played in the backyard of their home in the South Borough of Queens. Emma singing her favorite songs while helping make dinner. Emma telling bad jokes she found hilarious. That's when he got an idea. The next morning, Ethan waited for Dr. Catherine to finish her morning rounds before approaching Nurse Diane. "Mrs. Diane, can I ask you something?" "Of course, dear." "Do you have children?" Diane smiled for the first time since Ethan had met her. "I do. 2. One Emma's age and one a bit younger. And do they like listening to your stories?" "They love them." "Why do you ask?" Ethan took a deep breath before explaining his new strategy. "I'd like to record some stories about Emma. Funny things that happened to her, memories we share. I read that sometimes the brain responds better to familiar voices talking about meaningful things than to random music." Diane considered the proposal. There was something touching about the boy's determination, the way he refused to give up on his sister. "And who do you plan to ask to record these stories?" "Our mom, when she can come. Some of Emma's school friends. Maybe our neighbor, Mrs. Margaret, who's always been fond of her." "All right," Diane said after a pause. "But it needs to be organized. I can't have people coming and going at all hours." Ethan smiled for the first time in weeks. "Thank you so much, ma'am. It'll work, I'm sure of it." Diane watched the boy walk down the hallway. There was something about his unshakable confidence that made her secretly hope he was right, even though the odds were slim. That afternoon, Ethan managed to convince 3 of Emma's friends to come to the hospital. Olivia, Madison, and Ava were girls Emma's age, classmates who seemed genuinely worried about their friend. "How is she?" Olivia asked as soon as they entered the room. "The doctors say there's no improvement, but I know she can hear us," Ethan replied. The girls approached the bed carefully, awed by all the equipment. "She looks like she's sleeping," Madison said softly. "It's kind of like that," Ethan explained. "But you can talk normally, even loudly if you want." He turned on the small recorder he'd borrowed from a friend. "I want you to tell stories about Emma, things you did together, funny moments, anything that might remind her of who she is." Ava was the first to speak. "Emma, remember that time you brought the hamster to school hidden in your backpack?" The teacher was furious when it escaped and ran around the classroom. The other girls laughed, and even Ethan smiled at the memory. "Oh, and when you bet you could eat 3 whole pastries during recess," Olivia continued. "You almost did it, but you had a stomachache all afternoon." "She was always that stubborn," Madison added. "Remember when she said she'd learn to skateboard on her own? Came home all scraped up, but the next day she was right back at it." Ethan watched the monitors closely as the friends kept sharing stories. Was there something different in Emma's expression, or was it just his desperate imagination? "I want you to record more," he said as the girls prepared to leave. "Can you come back tomorrow?" "Of course," Ava replied. "We want to help however we can." After they left, Ethan was alone with Emma again. He placed the recorder by the bed and played back her friends' voices. He closed his eyes and tried to imagine what it was like to be in Emma's place, lost in some dark corner of her mind, trying to find her way back. "You heard them, didn't you, Em?" he whispered. "Everyone's waiting for you to come back. You can't give up now." In the early hours, Ethan was woken by footsteps in the hallway. It was the night shift nurse, a young woman named Ashley, whom he had seen a few times but never spoken to. "You shouldn't sleep here," she said quietly. "I can't go home," Ethan replied, rubbing his eyes. "What if she wakes up and I'm not here?" Ashley stepped closer to the bed and checked some of the machines. There was something in the way she looked at Emma that seemed different from the other professionals. "Do you really believe this could work?" she asked, pointing to the recorder. "I have to believe. It's all I have left." "I had a younger sister too," Ashley said after a moment. She never recovered from a similar accident." Ethan felt his heart tighten. "I'm so sorry. It was 5 years ago. I was still in nursing school. Ever since then, I keep wondering if there was more that could have been done." She looked at Emma for a few more seconds before continuing. "If you want, I can help. Unofficially, you know, but I can keep an eye on the monitors during your sessions. If there's any change, no matter how small, I'll note it." "You'd do that?" "I would, but it has to be our secret. If anyone finds out, I could lose my job." Ethan nodded vigorously. "Thank you, Ashley. Thank you so much." From that night on, Ethan had a silent ally. Ashley always found an excuse to pass by the room during the sessions, discreetly noting any changes in Emma's vitals. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. A week after the first recording session, something happened that completely changed the situation. Ethan was playing back a story he had recorded about Emma's 10th birthday when Ashley entered the room with a different expression. "Ethan, you need to see this," she said, stepping closer to the heart monitor. "What is it?" Her heartbeat. It sped up during the part about the chocolate cake. Not by much, but enough to be noticeable. Ethan felt a wave of emotion rush through him. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. Look here." Ashley pointed to the marks on the monitor's paper. "All week her rhythm has been steady, but right here when you were talking about her blowing out the candles, there was a clear acceleration. Does that mean she's hearing?" "It could. I need to document everything carefully to see if it happens again." Ethan almost shouted with joy, but held back to avoid drawing unnecessary attention. "I'll tell Nurse Diane." "No," Ashley interrupted. "Not yet. It needs to be more consistent. A single change could be a coincidence. Let's watch for a few more days." In the following days, Ethan intensified the sessions. He brought more recordings, including one from his own mother, whom he had convinced to record during one of her rare visits to the hospital. Sarah had cried the whole time, talking about when Emma was born, her first steps, her first words. "She said Eth before she said Mama," Sarah said in the recording. "You were so proud, my son. You said she loved you more than me." Ashley continued secretly noting Emma's reactions, small changes in heart rate, subtle shifts in blood pressure, tiny variations in breathing. Nothing dramatic, but enough to suggest something was happening in the girl's brain. Then Dr. Catherine found out. "What is the meaning of this?" she asked, holding Ashley's notes. Just routine observations, doctor, the nurse tried to explain. Routine observations don't include correlations with non-medical activities, the doctor replied, her voice thick with irritation. Are you working with that boy? Ashley lowered her head, knowing she'd been caught. Doctor, I just wanted to help. And there really seemed to be some reactions. Reactions? Dr. Catherine examined the papers more closely. These changes are minimal, within the normal variation range for any coma patient. But they coincide with the recording sessions. Coincidence, pure coincidence. And you know the hospital's policy on unconventional methods. Ashley knew she was in trouble but decided to press on. What if it's not a coincidence? What if something real is happening? The doctor gave her a stern look. Nurse, how long have you been practicing? 3 years, doctor. I've been handling neurological cases for 15. Believe me when I say I can tell the difference between real progress and wishful thinking. She folded the papers and tucked them into her pocket. I want you to stop these observations immediately and inform the boy that his sessions are suspended until further notice. Ashley's heart clenched. She knew Ethan would be devastated. Doctor, please. That's an order. And if I find out you're still involved in this, there will be consequences for your career. When Ashley told Ethan about the suspension, the boy stayed silent for a long moment. Then his eyes filled with angry tears. They can't do this. It was working. Ethan, I know, but no, you don't understand. He stood up from the chair, waving his hands. For the first time in weeks, I had real hope. For the first time, it felt like Emma was trying to come back. Ashley glanced around, making sure no one was listening. Look, I can't help you officially anymore, but I can give you a tip. What tip? There's a psychologist at the hospital, Dr. Margaret Wilson. She works with families in difficult situations. Maybe she can advocate for you. You think she'd listen to me? It's worth a try. She has a more open approach to alternative methods. Ethan spent the rest of the day trying to find Dr. Margaret. He discovered she worked on the 3rd floor, in a small, cozy office that stood out from the sterile hospital environment. You must be Ethan, she said when he knocked. She was a woman in her 50s with graying hair and kind eyes. Nurse Ashley told me about you. Can you help me? Can you tell me your side of the story? Ethan sat in the comfortable armchair and began explaining everything from the beginning. Dr. Margaret listened without interrupting, only making small notes in a notebook. Do you have the recordings with you? She asked when he finished. I have some on my phone. May I hear them? Ethan played some of the most emotional recordings, his mother talking about Emma's childhood, friends recalling funny moments, even himself narrating stories from when they were younger. Interesting, Dr. Margaret murmured. There's a very strong emotional consistency in these narratives. Do you think it could work? I think it's worth investigating. There are studies on the effectiveness of familiar emotional stimuli in neurological trauma cases. It's not mainstream, but it's not pseudoscience either. Ethan felt a renewed wave of hope. Can you talk to Dr. Catherine? I can try. But I should warn you, she's very resistant to anything outside traditional protocols. Please, just try, that's all I'm asking. Dr. Margaret smiled. I'll see what I can do. But in the meantime, don't stop recording. Keep collecting memories, stories, anything meaningful to your sister. That night, Ethan returned home for the first time in 2 weeks. The small house in the South Borough of Queens felt strange without Emma's presence. Everything was exactly as she had left it. School books scattered on the table, a half-finished drawing stuck to the fridge, dolls neatly arranged in the room she shared with her mother. Sarah was in the kitchen making coffee when he arrived. How is she? She asked without even looking at her son. The same, but I'm sure she's getting better. Ethan, sweetheart. Sarah turned, and he could see her reddened eyes and the worry lines that seemed to have deepened over the past few weeks. Maybe it's time to accept that. No, he interrupted. I won't accept anything. She's coming back. My boy, I want to believe that too, but the doctors are wrong. I've seen her reactions. When I play the recordings, something changes. Sarah sighed deeply. She worked 14-hour days to cover the extra hospital bills, slept only 4 hours a night, and still had to deal with her eldest son's stubbornness. What if it doesn't work? What if we're just prolonging her suffering? She's not suffering, Mom. She's fighting to come back. How can you be so sure? Ethan stepped closer and held his mother's work-worn hands. Because I know Emma. She's never given up on anything in her life. Remember when she wanted to learn guitar and practiced until her fingers bled? Remember when she decided to be the top student in her class and stayed up late studying every night? Sarah nodded, her eyes filling with tears. She's always been determined. So why would this be any different? Why would she give up now? Mother and son stood embraced in the small kitchen, each trying to give the other strength. What do you need from me? Sarah finally asked. I need you to record more stories. I need you to believe with me. Okay, but promise me one thing. What? If there comes a time when there's truly no hope left, you'll help me let her go peacefully. Ethan hesitated before answering. I promise, but that time hasn't come yet. The next morning, Ethan returned to the hospital with a bag full of Emma's personal belongings. He had spoken to Dr. Margaret on the phone, and she had suggested he try incorporating other sensory stimuli into the sessions. I brought some of Emma's things, he explained to Ashley when he met her in the hallway. What kind of things? The perfume she used to wear, some clothes that still smell like her, the stuffed bear she slept with since she was little. Ashley glanced around nervously. Ethan, you know I can't officially help you anymore. I know, but you can at least not stop me, right? She smiled faintly. I didn't see anything. In the room, Ethan carefully arranged the items around Emma's bed. He placed the faded stuffed bear beside her hand, spritzed a bit of perfume on her pillow, and hung one of her favorite t-shirts over the chair. Look what I brought, Em, he said, holding his sister's cold hand. Remember Mr. Fluffy? You cried so hard when you thought you'd lost him on the beach trip. He turned on the recorder and played one of the most emotional narratives he had collected, Emma herself singing a song at their mother's last birthday. The recording had been made on Sarah's phone, and the quality wasn't great, but the girl's cheerful voice was unmistakable. Ethan watched Emma's face intently as the recording played. Was there something different? A slight twitch in her facial muscles, or was it just his imagination? Doctor, you need to see this, a voice said behind him. Ethan turned and saw a woman he didn't recognize. He was young, perhaps in his late 30s, with dark hair and an expression of genuine curiosity. Who are you? Dr. Jennifer Davis. I'm a visiting neurologist from Chicago. I'm here for a few weeks, studying interesting cases. Interesting? Your sister. I read her file, and there are a few things that caught my attention. Ethan felt his heart race. What kind of things? First, tell me about these sessions you've been doing. I want to hear your version. Ethan once again recounted the whole story, showing the recordings and explaining his theory about familiar emotional stimuli. Dr. Jennifer listened carefully, asking specific questions about the reactions he had observed. Have you been noting the exact times of these reactions? Nurse Ashley was keeping track, but Dr. Catherine stopped it. I see. And you said there's a correlation between certain stories and changes in her vitals. It seems so, especially when the recording talks about very happy or meaningful moments in her life. Dr. Jennifer moved closer to the monitors and studied the numbers for a few minutes. Can I see the recordings you find most effective? Ethan showed 3 specific recordings. His mother talking about Emma's birth, friends reminiscing about a special birthday party, and himself narrating the day she got a new bicycle. Interesting, murmured the doctor. There's a common emotional pattern in these narratives. What pattern? They all involve moments of achievement, genuine joy, or personal fulfillment for your sister. They're not just random memories. Ethan nodded vigorously. Exactly, I thought the same thing. It's like her brain responds better to memories that trigger positive emotions. That makes neurological sense. The brain areas responsible for positive emotional memories are more resilient to trauma than other regions. For the first time in weeks, Ethan felt truly understood by a medical professional. Do you think it could work? I believe it's worth serious investigation. Can I speak with Dr. Catherine about structuring a more formal protocol? Please. She won't listen to me, but maybe she'll listen to another doctor. Dr. Jennifer smiled. I'll see what I can do. Keep up the sessions, but be discreet. And note everything, times, reactions, types of stimuli. We need consistent data. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The conversation between the two doctors happened that same afternoon in Dr. Catherine's office. Ethan wasn't present, but Ashley, who was passing by the hallway, overheard part of the discussion. Catherine, you need to consider the possibility that there's something real happening here, said Dr. Jennifer. Jennifer, you've been at the hospital for 2 days. I've known this case for 3 weeks. I've seen dozens of families go through similar denial. But have you seen the data the nurse collected? There are consistent correlations. Minimal correlations that could be explained by normal variations in vitals. And if they're not, what if we're wasting a chance to explore a neurological stimulation method that could have broader applications? There was a pause in the conversation. What are you proposing? Asked Dr. Catherine. A structured protocol, 2 weeks of controlled observation. If there are no objective, measurable results, we stop everything. And if the family develops unrealistic expectations, they already have unrealistic expectations. The difference is, now we'll have scientific data to confirm or refute them. Another pause. 2 weeks, but with strict monitoring, and at the first sign of complications, we cancel everything. Agreed. Ashley smiled discreetly and stepped away before being seen. Finally, Ethan would have a real chance to prove his theory. When Dr. Jennifer found Ethan in Emma's room that night, he was playing a recording of the children's grandmother, Mrs. Margaret, talking about when Emma had helped tend the garden. I have good news, she said. You got it? 2 weeks of experimental protocol, but it has to be done right. Fixed schedules, constant monitoring, documentation of everything. Ethan nearly jumped for joy. Thank you so much. Easy. We haven't won anything yet. Now the real work begins. Over the next 2 weeks, Emma's room transformed into a small emotional stimulus lab. Dr. Jennifer set up 1-hour sessions 3 times a day with detailed monitoring of all vital signs. Ethan organized the recordings by category: memories of personal achievements, moments of family joy, funny situations, and declarations of love and affection. Each category was tested at specific times, with controlled intervals between sessions. Sarah managed to negotiate with her employers for some afternoons off to participate in the protocol. It was the first time in years that mother and son had worked together on something, united by the same goal. Remember when she did that school presentation on marine animals? Sarah recorded. She studied for weeks, made huge posters. On the day of the presentation, she was so nervous she almost quit. But when she started speaking, she was brilliant. The teacher said she'd never seen a child so prepared. During this specific recording, the monitors registered more pronounced changes than usual. Emma's heart rate increased by 10 beats per minute, and her blood pressure rose slightly. Is this significant? Ethan asked. It's promising, Dr. Jennifer replied, carefully noting the data. But we need to see if it repeats. On the 5th day of the protocol, something happened that surprised everyone. Ethan was playing a recording of Emma's friends talking about a school trip when Ashley noticed something different. Doctor, look here, she called, pointing to Emma's hand. What is it? Her fingers. They twitched a little. Ethan looked closely and saw there was indeed a subtle movement in his sister's fingers. It wasn't much, just a slight flex, but it was clearly visible. Emma, he called, holding her hand tighter. Are you there? There was no response, but the twitch in her fingers happened again. I need to get Dr. Jennifer, Ashley said, rushing out of the room. By the time the neurologist arrived, the movement had stopped, but Ashley described exactly what she'd seen. Did you correlate it with any specific part of the recording? The doctor asked. Yes, Ethan replied. It was when the girls were talking about her winning a science fair award. Another memory of personal achievement, Dr. Jennifer observed. The pattern holds. She approached the bed and carefully examined Emma's hand. Emma, if you can hear me, Try moving your fingers again." Everyone fell silent, watching intently. For a moment nothing happened. Then, almost imperceptibly, the fingers moved once more. "My God," Ashley whispered. "It's real progress," Dr. Jennifer said, her voice filled with restrained excitement. "Small but real." Ethan felt tears in his eyes. "She's coming back." "It's still too early for definitive conclusions," the doctor cautioned, "but it's encouraging." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep from anxiety. He stayed by Emma's bedside, whispering stories and watching for every tiny movement, every shift in breathing, every change in her expression. "I knew you were too strong to give up," he said. "Now you just need to keep fighting." The next day, Dr. Catherine appeared in the room accompanied by Dr. Jennifer. Her expression was a mix of skepticism and curiosity. "I heard there were some changes," she said, examining the charts from the previous night. "Voluntary finger movements correlated with specific stimuli," explained Dr. Jennifer. "Calling them voluntary is premature. They could just be muscle spasms." "They could, but the timing is too specific to be a coincidence." Dr. Catherine stepped closer to the bed and examined Emma herself. "I'll perform some basic neurological tests," she said. She began checking Emma's reflexes, testing responses to physical stimuli. When she reached the eye reflexes, something unexpected happened. "Her eyes moved," said Ashley. "Involuntary eye movements are common in coma patients," explained Dr. Catherine. "But they followed the light," insisted Ashley. Dr. Catherine repeated the test, moving the small flashlight from left to right. Emma's eyes tracked the light. That's not normal for her condition," admitted Dr. Catherine, her voice losing some of its earlier confidence. "Emma," called Ethan, "if you can hear me, try to open your eyes." For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, slowly, Emma's eyelids began to move. They didn't open fully, but it was clearly an intentional motion. "My God," whispered Dr. Catherine. Ethan held his sister's hand, barely containing his emotions. "Is this real?" he asked. "It seems to be," replied Dr. Jennifer. "We'll increase monitoring and continue with the protocol." "Wait," said Dr. Catherine. "If this is real, we need to document everything properly. This could be a significant case for medical literature." Ethan didn't care about medical literature. He just wanted his sister back. In the following days, the progress became more consistent. Emma began responding with small movements when hearing certain recordings, especially those involving personal achievements or moments of intense happiness. Dr. Jennifer established an even more refined protocol, testing different types of emotional stimuli and mapping Emma's responses. They discovered she reacted more strongly to familiar voices, recounting specific memories than to music or other sounds. "It's as if her personality is being rebuilt through memories," Dr. Jennifer explained to Ethan. "Every story, every memory, is like a small puzzle piece falling into place." "How long could this take?" "I don't know. Every case is unique, but the progress has been steady." On the 10th day of the protocol, the first major breakthrough happened. Ethan was playing a recording he had made himself, recounting the day Emma scored her first goal in a school soccer game. "You were so proud," his recorded voice said. "You ran across the entire field with your arms wide open, shouting, 'I did it, I did it!'" Everyone cheered. That's when Emma opened her eyes. It wasn't for long, maybe 5 seconds, but they were the most important 5 seconds of Ethan's life. His sister's blue eyes opened, focused on his face, and a faint expression of recognition crossed her features before she closed them again. "Emma!" Ethan shouted. "You saw me!" Ashley rushed to call the doctors, and within minutes the room was full of professionals examining Emma. The tests confirmed she had shown clear signs of awareness, however brief. "This changes everything," said Dr. Jennifer. "She's not just responding to stimuli, she's demonstrating conscious recognition." Dr. Catherine, who had initially been skeptical, was now genuinely impressed. "I'll contact some colleagues who specialize in neuroplasticity," she said. "This case could have important implications for other patients." Sarah arrived at the hospital that afternoon, and found Ethan more excited than she had seen him in weeks. "Mum," she opened her eyes. She looked right at me. "Are you sure?" Sarah asked, trying not to get her hopes too high. "Absolutely, the doctors confirmed it. She's coming back." Mother and son embraced, crying with joy and relief. In the following days, progress accelerated. Emma began opening her eyes more frequently, always in response to specific stimuli. She started moving her head slightly when she heard familiar voices, and her fingers responded with squeezes when Ethan held her hand. The medical team meticulously documented every improvement. The case was becoming an important study on neurological recovery through familiar emotional stimuli. "I want to try something," Dr. Jennifer said on the 15th day. "I'll ask Emma a few simple questions and see if she can respond with movements." She approached the bed where Emma lay with her eyes open, gazing vaguely at the ceiling. "Emma, if you can hear me, squeeze your brother's hand." Ethan held his sister's hand and waited. After a few seconds, he felt a faint but deliberate pressure. "Very good," the doctor said. "Now, if your brother's name is Ethan, squeeze twice." 2 faint but distinct squeezes. "Perfect. If you want to get out of this bed and go home, squeeze 3 times. 3 squeezes, stronger than before." Ethan laughed through his tears. "She's there. She's really there." From that moment on, Emma's recovery accelerated exponentially. Each day she became more responsive, more aware of her surroundings. She began making small sounds, then whispers, then isolated words. The first clear word she spoke was "Ethan," whispered on a hot summer afternoon in New York City, 3 weeks after the experimental protocol began. "Hi, Em," he replied, holding her hand. "Welcome back." "Tired," she whispered. "I know. But you did it. You fought and made it back." Emma smiled weakly, her first genuine smile in over a month. Sarah arrived at the hospital that night and found her 2 children talking quietly. Emma was still very weak and confused, but she was clearly aware and responsive. "Mom," Emma said when she saw Sarah enter the room. "Hi, sweetheart," Sarah replied, barely able to speak through her tears. "How are you feeling?" "Confused. Where am I?" "In the hospital. You had an accident, but you're getting better now." Emma looked around, trying to process the information. "How long was I asleep?" "A while," Ethan said. "But that doesn't matter now. What matters is that you're back." Emma's physical recovery would still take months. She had to relearn many basic skills, undergo intensive physical therapy, and cope with memory gaps from before the accident. But her personality, her essence, remained intact. The experimental protocol developed for her was formalized by the hospital and began being tested on other patients in similar situations. Dr. Jennifer published a paper on the case that was widely cited in international medical literature. Dr. Catherine, who had initially resisted the method, became one of the leading advocates for the familiar emotional stimuli approach. She established a pilot program at the hospital to apply the technique to other neurological patients. "I learned an important lesson from you," she told Ethan a few weeks later. "Sometimes medicine needs to be complemented by humanity. The love and determination of a family can achieve things our traditional protocols cannot." Ashley was promoted to supervisor of the new program, a recognition of her dedication and support for the development of the innovative technique. 6 months after the accident, Emma was back in school. She still needed some adjustments and extra support, but she was determined to make up for lost time. Her friends welcomed her with a celebration, and she quickly regained her place as one of the most dedicated students in the class. "Remember the recordings you made for me in the hospital?" she asked Olivia, Madison, and Ava during recess. "Of course. Why?" "I could hear you. Even when it seemed like I was asleep, I heard everything. That's what brought me back." The girls looked at each other with tears in their eyes. "I'm so glad it worked," said Ava. "We were so afraid you wouldn't come back." "I was always coming back," Emma replied confidently. "Too many people were waiting for me out here." At home, the family dynamic had also changed. Sarah found a better job with more flexible hours, allowing her to spend more time with her children. Ethan, who had matured quickly during the crisis, kept his determination and responsibility, but also returned to his own activities and dreams. "You know what I learned?" he said to Emma one night as she did her homework at the kitchen table. "What?" "That sometimes you have to fight for the people you love, even when everyone says it's pointless. And sometimes you have to trust the people fighting for you," she replied, "even when you can't show you're listening." Ethan smiled, especially then. The method developed for Emma continued to be refined and applied to other patients. Not all had the same success, but a significant percentage showed improvement when subjected to the family emotional stimulus protocol. The Miller family's story spread through the medical community and beyond. Ethan was invited to speak at neurology conferences, always accompanied by Dr. Jennifer, explaining the family's perspective in developing the protocol. "The most important thing wasn't the technique itself," he said in one of these talks. "It was not giving up. It was believing that love and science can work together to achieve things neither could do alone." Emma, now 13 and fully recovered, often joined her brother at these presentations. "People always ask if I remember anything from the time I was unconscious," she said in an interview for a medical journal. "The truth is, I remembered everything. Every word, every song, every story. They were my map back home." The bond between the siblings grew even stronger after the experience. Ethan had proven he would do anything for Emma, and she had shown an inner strength that surprised everyone. "Sometimes I think about what would have happened if Ethan had given up," Sarah said in an interview. "But then I remember, that's just not his way. He's always been protective of his sister ever since they were little. This time he just took that protection to another level." The hospital where it all happened became a reference center for treating neurological patients with complementary techniques. The Miller Protocol, as it came to be known, was implemented in many other hospitals across the country and began to be studied internationally. 2 years after the accident, Emma wasn't just fully recovered. She had become one of the top students in her school. Her experience made her cherish every moment, every opportunity to learn and grow. "I wouldn't recommend anyone go through what I did," she said in a presentation to medical students. "But it also wouldn't change anything, because it taught me things I never would have learned otherwise." "What kind of things?" asked one of the students. "That we're stronger than we think, that love can literally save lives, and that sometimes unconventional methods are exactly what we need." Ethan, now 19 and studying medicine, often used his experience with Emma as motivation for his studies. "I want to better understand what happened to her," he said in an interview. "I want to help other families going through similar situations." Dr. Jennifer, who had documented the entire process, continued researching applications of the protocol for other types of neurological trauma. Her studies suggested the technique could be effective not only for coma cases, but also for patients with Alzheimer's, severe depression, and other neurological disorders. Emma's case opened a door to a new understanding of the role of emotions in neurological recovery, she explained at an international conference. "We're discovering that the brain is far more resilient and adaptable than we imagined, especially when properly stimulated." The Miller family became a symbol of hope for other families facing similar struggles. Sarah received hundreds of letters from people thanking her for sharing their story, saying it gave them strength not to give up on their own loved ones. "At first, I was angry about all the attention," Sarah admitted. "I just wanted my family back to normal. But then I realized our experience could help others, and that gave new meaning to all the suffering we went through." The protocol continued evolving with each new case. Doctors learned to better identify which types of stimuli worked for different patients, how to personalize approaches, and how to more effectively measure progress. "Every patient is unique," explained Dr. Catherine, who became one of the leading specialists in the technique. What worked for Emma might not work exactly the same for another patient, but the basic principles, familiar emotional stimuli, positive memories, voices of loved ones, those seem to be universal. 3 years after the accident, Emma decided she wanted to study neuropsychology. "I want to understand my own experience from a scientific perspective," she said, "and I want to help others who go through similar situations." Ethan, in his 3rd year of medical school, fully supported his sister's decision. "It'll be amazing to have you as a colleague in the field," he said. "Imagine what we could discover working together." The connection between science and humanity, which had been crucial in Emma's recovery, remained the focus of research stemming from her case. Studies showed that patients who received the protocol of familiar emotional stimuli not only recovered more often, but also maintained a better quality of life afterward. "What we've learned is that healing isn't just about fixing physical problems," Dr. Jennifer said in a final interview. "It's about reconnecting people with who they are, their memories, their relationships, their reasons for living." The Miller family's story became more than a medical case. It became a testament to the power of love, persistence, and refusing to accept limits set by others. It showed that sometimes the most effective solutions come not from sophisticated labs, but from the hearts of people who refuse to give up. Today, 10 years after the accident, Emma is a licensed neuropsychologist specializing in neurological trauma recovery. Ethan is a neurologist working at the same hospital where it all began. Sarah went back to school and graduated as a nursing technician, working specifically with families of neurological patients. The family that was nearly destroyed by tragedy became a force of healing and hope for countless others. "Sometimes people ask me if I'm angry about what happened," Emma said in a recent interview. "The answer is no. It obviously wasn't easy, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But this experience shaped who I became, shaped our family, and allowed us to help so many others. Looking back, I wouldn't change a thing." The Miller Protocol is now taught in medical schools across the country. It represents a fundamental shift in how healthcare professionals approach complex neurological cases, incorporating family and emotional connections as an integral part of treatment. "The most important thing we've learned," Ethan said in a recent lecture, "is to never underestimate the power of love and determination. Science is essential, but sometimes we need to go beyond what the textbooks say is possible." And so, a story that began with despair and seeming impossibility became a testament to how miracles can happen when science and love work together, when families refuse to give up, and when medical professionals have the humility to listen and learn from unconventional methods. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this inspiring story. Do you believe love and determination can truly make a difference in medicine? Leave your comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories like this one.